right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of cybersecurity.
Yes.
And, this might seem like something only tech professionals need to worry about, but trust me,
Yeah.
this is relevant to everyone. We're talking about the tools and techniques that are shaping the future of how we interact in the digital space.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like a high-stakes game where the stakes just keep getting higher.
Oh, I like that.
And we're all playing whether we realize it or not.
I like that analogy a lot. It's like we're in a digital spy thriller, and
Oh,
today we're giving you
exactly.
the inside scoop.
Behind the scenes, yep.
Exactly. So to get specific, we're diving deep into Kali Linux, ever heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
And then the rapidly evolving role of AI in cybersecurity.
So think of it this way. Today, we're kind of giving you a peek inside the toolbox of both the heroes and, well, let's just say, not the heroes
Okay, I like
in
that.
the cybersecurity world.
A little bit of a mystery there. I
Oh.
like it. So let's start with Kali Linux. To me, it sounds like something straight out of The Matrix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just sounds very intense.
Well, there's a reason for those Hollywood vibes.
Okay.
Because Kali Linux is really designed for penetration testing and ethical hacking.
So is there a way to explain it? I mean, when I hear penetration testing, I immediately think of almost a physical
Sure.
kind of component to that.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. It's the ultimate digital detective kit.
Okay, so it's like a Swiss Army knife for cybersecurity professionals.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but I need specifics. What kind of tools are we talking about? Can you give me some examples?
We're talking over 600 tools,
Wow.
each designed for different aspects of cybersecurity. So it really is that master key ring that can open any door.
Okay, so over 600, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with a category called reconnaissance and scanning.
Okay.
Imagine you're a detective, right? You're casing a building. You wouldn't just barge in.
No.
You'd want to know the layout. You'd want to know the entry points. You'd want to know the security measures.
Absolutely.
That's what reconnaissance is all about, but in the digital world.
So it's about gathering intel before making a move.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And one of the most popular tools for this is called Nmap, which stands for network mapper. And it's like having X-ray vision for networks.
X-ray vision, you say. So tell me more. How does that work?
So Nmap scans networks to identify every device that's connected to it, what services are running on those devices, even what operating systems they're using.
Oh, wow.
So it's all about mapping the terrain before you even, step foot inside.
So you're telling me with this Nmap, you can basically see everything that's happening on a particular network.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, that's impressive,
Mm-hmm.
but also a little scary, to be honest.
It can be.
So what about those of us who aren't, quite as tech savvy? Is there a more user-friendly version of this?
Absolutely. There's a tool called ZenMap,
Okay.
which basically takes all that data that Nmap collects and gives you a nice visual representation of it. So it turns those raw numbers into an easy-to-understand map.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But doing the layout, that's just the first step, right?
Right.
What happens after the reconnaissance? What's next?
So that's where things get even more interesting. Once you've mapped that network, the next step might be to see if you can exploit any vulnerabilities.
Okay.
That's where tools like Metasploit come in.
Metasploit. See, that's another one of those names that just sounds so intense. It sounds like something you would use to infiltrate, like a top secret facility in a movie.
Chuckles. Yeah, it's definitely a powerful tool, but in the right hands, it's used for a lot of good. So Metasploit is basically a framework for developing and testing exploits.
Hold on. Before we go any further, can you explain what an exploit is? Because I think our listeners could use a quick refresher on that.
Sure. An exploit is essentially a piece of code or a technique that takes advantage of a vulnerability in a system. So think of it like, finding a weak spot in a fortress wall.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So ethical hackers, those are the good guys.
Yeah.
You're using Metasploit to basically find those weak spots before the bad guys do.
Exactly.
It's like a controlled demolition to prevent a catastrophic collapse.
I like that analogy. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it allows security professionals to simulate those real-world attacks, but in a controlled environment,
Right.
so they can identify and fix those vulnerabilities before someone with malicious intent can get to them.
So ethical hacking is all about staying one step ahead of the game, like a constant game of chess, but with incredibly high stakes.
Very high stakes. And speaking of staying ahead of the game, we can't forget about social engineering. which kind of bypasses all those fancy technical tools and really targets the weakest link in the chain, which is human psychology.
Right. This is where we talk about those phishing emails that are so cleverly disguised
Exactly.
that they trick people into clicking on a malicious link or giving away their passwords. Have you ever fallen for one of those?
Oh, almost, definitely. I mean, who hasn't, right?
Right.
But some of them are getting so sophisticated, it's really hard to tell
It is.
what's real and what's not these days.
Exactly. And you would think that, with all of our best efforts, that those phishing attempts would be pretty obvious.
You would think, yeah.
But there are tools out there that can create some incredibly convincing scams.
Yeah, and there's one in particular called the Social Engineer Toolkit, or SET, as it's known,
Okay.
in the cybersecurity world.
So tell me more about this toolkit.
Uh,
How does it work? What does it do?
So SET basically automates the creation of all sorts of social engineering attacks. So think phishing emails that are very carefully crafted, fake websites that are designed to steal your credentials. It even includes tools for creating payloads.
What's a payload?
So a payload is...
Kind of like a scary word?
It can be. It depends on what the payload is, I guess.
Okay.
But essentially, it's the actual malicious part
Okay.
that gets delivered. And it can do a variety of things. It can take control of your system. It can steal your information.
So it's like the Trojan horse
It's,
of
again,
the digital world.
a perfect analogy.
Okay, this is officially getting a little scary for me.
Mm.
I mean, I consider myself fairly tech savvy, and even I've almost fallen for a phishing scam or two. It makes you realize just how easily we can all be manipulated.
Absolutely. And that's what makes social engineering such an effective attack vector, right?
Right.
Because it preys on our natural tendencies to trust, our curiosity, and sometimes even our desire to help.
Right. And we all want to be helpful.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder, though, to be vigilant and to think twice before clicking on anything suspicious, no matter how convincing it may seem.
Always double check that email address, double check the website you're on.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
So we've talked about mapping networks, finding vulnerabilities, and even manipulating people. What other tricks does Kali Linux have up its sleeve?
Well, how about cracking passwords? Kali Linux includes tools like John the Ripper and Hashcat, which are specifically designed to break through password protection.
John the Ripper, Hashcat. Again, these sound like
Just
cyberpunk novels, something like that.
yeah.
What are those? How do they work?
So those are password cracking tools, and they work by using these really sophisticated algorithms to basically just guess passwords at an alarming speed.
Okay, how fast are we talking here?
We're talking millions, even billions of password combinations per second.
Wow, okay. So much for my 12-character password with a random assortment of symbols.
Right, exactly.
I guess this really highlights the importance of strong, unique passwords for everything.
It really does. And not just strong passwords, but things like multi-factor authentication, which adds that extra layer of security.
Right, so it's like having a deadbolt and a security system for your digital life.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so while those are really powerful, it sounds like they're just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cybersecurity, right?
Yeah. And the world of cybersecurity is constantly evolving. And right now, there's a big game changer on the horizon, artificial intelligence.
AI. Okay, that's a perfect segue to our next topic. I've heard a lot of buzz, obviously, about AI in cybersecurity,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll admit, I don't think I fully grasp all of the implications. So you're saying it's a game changer.
It's a game changer, but it's a double-edged sword.
Ooh, double-edged sword. Okay, I need to know more. A double-edged sword, huh? All right, you got to tell me more about this. What makes AI so revolutionary in cybersecurity?
Well, it all comes down to scale and speed. Imagine analyzing mountains of data, detecting even the tiniest anomalies, and reacting instantly.
Wow.
Even predicting future attacks. That's the potential of AI in this field.
So it's like having a superpowered security guard who's always watching, never misses a beat, and can even see into the future.
Exactly. And for
Oh.
cybersecurity professionals, this is a game changer.
Huh.
Let's start with threat detection.
All right.
Traditional security systems, they rely on recognizing known threats, right?
What?
AI can actually learn to spot anomalies even if they've never been seen before.
So we're not just playing catch up with the latest malware, we're actually anticipating new threats before they even emerge.
Precisely. AI excels at pattern recognition,
Yeah.
and it can process massive amounts of data network traffic, system logs, user behavior
Okay.
to identify those subtle deviations that might indicate a threat.
So it's almost like having a sixth sense for cyber attacks.
You could say that.
But even if a threat does slip through, you mentioned AI can improve response times as well.
Absolutely. Incident response is another area where AI shines.
Okay.
Think about it. When you're dealing with a cyber attack, every second counts.
Right.
AI can automate those initial responses, isolating affected systems, blocking malicious IP addresses, all in milliseconds.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like having a digital SWAT team ready to deploy at a moment's notice.
Exactly.
But this all sounds a little too good to be true. You did say AI is a double-edged sword, so what happens when this technology falls into the wrong hands?
Well, that's where things get a bit concerning.
Okay.
Imagine a world where malware is no longer created by humans, but by these AI systems that can learn and adapt in real time.
That sounds terrifying.
It's a very real concern. AI-powered malware could be designed to constantly evolve, changing its code, its behavior, even its digital fingerprints, to make it almost impossible for traditional security software to detect.
So it's like a digital chameleon, always changing to avoid detection.
Precisely. And because it can learn from its experiences and adapt, this type of malware is incredibly difficult to combat.
That's a chilling thought. What about phishing attacks? Can AI make those more convincing too?
Absolutely. Remember we were talking about the social engineer toolkit, SETI.
Yes.
Imagine an AI system that could not only automate the creation of phishing emails, but personalize them to a degree we've never seen before.
Okay.
We're not talking about your average Nigerian prince scams here. This would be far more sophisticated.
So you're saying AI could create phishing emails so believable that even the most cautious person might fall for it?
Exactly.
Wow.
We're talking about AI analyzing your online behavior, your social media posts, even your writing style to craft these hyper-targeted phishing emails that are almost indistinguishable from the real deal.
That is both fascinating and scary.
It is.
It's unsettling to think that my own digital footprint could be used against me like that.
And it's not just phishing. AI can also be used for something called security evasion. This means it can learn to bypass even the toughest security measures. Imagine an AI attacker probing your defenses, analyzing how you respond, and then adapting its tactics to find a way in.
It's just like a digital lockpick, constantly changing and learning until it cracks the code.
A very fitting analogy. AI-powered attacks could become incredibly persistent and incredibly difficult to defend against, even for the most sophisticated systems.
It really does feel like we're talking about a digital arms race here.
It is.
But instead of, tanks and missiles, we're talking about algorithms and exploits. It makes you wonder, is there any way to stay ahead of the curve in this kind of environment?
Well, it's definitely a constantly evolving landscape, but like they say, knowledge is power.
Right.
The more we understand these tools and these techniques, the good and the bad, the better we can protect ourselves.
Right. Awareness is key. So for our listeners out there who, maybe they aren't cybersecurity experts, what are some practical things that people can do to be safer in this digital world that just gets more complex every day?
Well, one of the most important things is to be mindful of your digital footprint.
Oh.
The more information you're putting out there, the more data points there are for these malicious actors to try to use against you.
Right.
So be thoughtful about what you're sharing on social media, what links you're clicking on, what information you're giving to websites, that kind of thing.
So being cautious, using common sense.
Exactly.
That sounds simple enough, but I imagine it takes a real concerted effort these days to sort of maintain that vigilance in a world where we're always connected.
It really does, because it's easy to get complacent.
It is.
But the threats are very real.
Right.
And that's where the real challenge lies, I think, is striking that balance between convenience and security, right?
Right.
We want to make the most of all the amazing things that technology has to offer, but not put ourselves at risk in doing so.
It's like walking a tightrope. It really is.
It is.
But what you're saying is that with AI entering the picture, it's going to get even more complicated.
Absolutely. AI has the potential to completely revolutionize cybersecurity.
Oh.
And we've talked about both sides of that coin, for better and for worse, right?
Right.
So the key is to stay informed
Absolutely.
and be aware of how these threats are evolving.
I have to say, this has been such a fascinating discussion, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit scary. It seems pretty clear we're entering a whole new era of cybersecurity, and the stakes are just getting higher and higher.
Absolutely. And it's not just a game for the tech professionals anymore.
Right.
It really affects all of us.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity.
It's been my pleasure.
This has really been eye-opening.
It's an important topic for sure.
It is. It is. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive. We hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of how you can stay safe in the digital world.
Stay curious.
And we'll see you next time.